This footnote is about resetting your standards in dating, otherwise known as boundaries. That was a really sloppy titling, but I don't care. Meka, you say things.
Yeah, well, whenever we're talking about boundaries, we've talked about it a lot in the show. And
in the context of he's just not that into you, and also other books that we've discussed as well.
Yeah. It's very, very important to know your boundaries and to consider them deeply. But I also like to show the other side of it too, that be careful of narcissistic type personalities that are happy to use these terms as a way to try and impose unrealistic or unsafe, trying to impose their own will on people. It's important to know that a boundary is you saying where you're comfortable to.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anyone has to, doesn't have to mesh with that. You can separate, you can stay away from each other if you do not have matching boundaries, because some boundaries, they don't have to be reasonable. I have had to cut off contact with people because they kept making horrible sounds that just set me off so badly. I was like, I can't deal with this. I know it's your stim thing, and for me it's just my autistic sensitivity thing. So we just can't be friends or hang out.
On that note, I feel like one of my boundaries would have to be I can't date anyone who's got a super high-pitched voice. Not that I've got people knocking down my door going, "Hey, Leslie!" But I really struggle with high-pitched noises, which is also shitty because I've got a tiny touch of low-tone deafness. So I'm just what do I do? Maybe that's why I'm constantly missing information. But again, it's not that I have anything against someone who might have a really, really high-pitched voice, but it's something that I, in my body, can't handle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can have a boundary that is unreasonable. People don't get to be oh, well, it's too unreasonable. You're well, I'm just saying this is what I'm going to do. Yeah. You can be in or you can be out.
It's like having an allergy in a way, If someone demands that I eat a fruit salad with fresh kiwi fruit in it, I'm going to be I can't because I'm allergic to fresh kiwi fruit. It's not oh, you have something against my salad? It's no, I'm allergic to kiwi fruit.
But also the reason I say consider it deeply is if you set something as a hard boundary, even though it's more of a preference, you can have so many hard boundaries that you will never find someone that can mesh with you. So being able to compromise still and finding a middle ground that doesn't overlap into the hard no part of your boundaries is the important thing that I like to mention that some people miss.
Yeah, and I can definitely agree with that. Some people become so self-protective as well with their boundaries that what they don't realize is that it's getting into that line of restricting themselves unnecessarily. They're creating these walls around themselves that are going to keep them isolated.
Yes.
But deciding what those are isn't necessarily something you can just put on a list and go, bad boundary, bad boundary, bad boundary. Because it's so contextual. I'm going to read you just a couple of the standard suggestions for resetting of standards from the book. And I want you to tell me if this gels with you or if it doesn't, okay? So standard suggestions. Imagine someone stating this as a boundary, okay? I will not go out with a man who hasn't asked me out first.
You do you, queen.
But for you, yes, no?
No, I would be we have very different values.
Yeah. I am a fan of making the first move. Not always. I don't like guessing. But if I really want to get to know someone in that way, I will tell them. Especially being polyamorous, I can't just assume that a guy's going to know I'm interested, especially if they know that I'm married, especially if I don't know their status in terms of non-monogamy. Like, I'm going to have to find some way to find out.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I will not, under any circumstances, spend my precious time with a man who has already rejected me.
I think it's a good idea to take no as no and move on. If you hyperfixate on an unavailable person, you're going to waste a lot of energy and time.
And you might get an ulcer.
Yeah.
And who needs those?
Yeah. Like, there's so many people in the world. If someone is saying they're not available, like, just believe them and try. There's so many people. Move on.
Yeah. Bounce off that trampoline onto a sexier trampoline.
Yeah, you don't want to drag people kicking and screaming into a relationship.
Here's one. I will not date a man who is married.
If you're monogamous, yeah, great idea.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's not a boundary for me, obviously. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say obviously because nothing's obvious, but...
I wouldn't date a person who's married and is also not poly.
Yeah. I definitely would date a polyamorous person who's married. But it's even, like, I've got a bit of a porous boundary at the moment relating to people who are open but not poly.
Oh, yeah.
And right now, in the current circumstance I'm in, being that I'm leaving the country in 2 months, I'm more open dating someone who is open but not poly than I would be if I foresaw, like, a bunch of years ahead of me.
Yeah.
Because I don't want that door open right now to something deeper.
Yeah.
But in general, it's a strong... And I guess that's why it's more of a preference than a boundary.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, again, correcting myself, thanks to Meka's input, it's a preference for me to date people who are polyamorous, not just in an open relationship.
Yes.
Because to me, that means that there isn't this arbitrary ceiling on our interactions that's already been predetermined.
Yep.
Being polyamorous suggests there's much more openness for things to develop organically without any firm rules in place already.
Yeah. And it's very much up to where you're at emotionally, resource-wise, emotional resources, time resources, and what your agreements are in your relationship.
Yeah.
Some people are only comfortable with open, non-romantic relationship, non-monogamous relationships. And some people are only comfortable with if you have an emotional connection outside of that.
Yeah.
So.
And for me, I need to know that there's space for things to develop in either direction, however they're going to develop.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that I date with the intention of making someone a partner. Doesn't mean that at all.
Yeah.
That said, I love love. And when that is on the table, it's like, oh, yay.
Yeah.
And I've gotten in, I'm not going to say full-on, like, arguments, but, you know, little debates with people who are open but not polyamorous about how, like, somehow, like, you know, around ethics, it's like, oh, but, like, my romantic capacities and, like, intimate intellectual capacities, that's for my partner. I don't share that with other people. We only just allow each other to have sex with other people, and that's more noble. It's like, no, like, come on. We're kind of on the same team, just wearing different uniforms. Like, chill.
I can't even have sex with someone, though, unless we're like, at least friendly friends.
Yeah.
And I do love my friends.
Yeah.
It's just, like, kind of the intensity of the love is the only difference.
I'm definitely not the most libidinous person in the world. Like, I'm just not. I'm not very quick to jump in the sack with anyone. And if I'm interacting with someone where the assumption is like, oh, but we're spending time together because it's a sex thing, it's like, nah,
Yeah.
I gotta go. I'm just not that into you. All right, how about, I will not date a man who drinks or does drugs to an extent that makes me uncomfortable.
That's a good one.
Is that one that you relate to as well?
Yeah, like if, like, it doesn't, that makes you uncomfortable. Yeah, you can't be in a relationship with someone who has behaviors that are going to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if if they're a teetotaler or whatever, like, yeah, don't date someone who drinks at all if you are a teetotaler and they're uncomfortable around drinking. As I said, boundaries are about your way you can be comfortable too, and anything over that is just going to be a drain and a negative.
Yeah. I agree with that because, like, my only boundaries in relation to alcohol and drugs is when there's a level of destruction or danger involved.
Yeah.
If they're engaging in behaviors that I feel put me at risk in any way, if they can't control themselves after they've had a few drinks, or if they're engaging in risky behaviors as a result of intoxication and that's just like a pattern for them, I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to go to that party. Yeah. That's not my thing. I'm just not into that.
Yeah. I don't need the heartbreak either of the destruction someone does to themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not here to fix everybody and be their mummy.
Yeah.
Like, I will support friends where I can, but I can't be everyone's support system.
Yeah. It can be really challenging as a person with a lot of deep empathy as well to uphold that kind of boundary.
And that's why I need to put the boundary in before the emotions get too strong.
Yeah.
Because I'd be fucked if I let myself grow at all close to them.
Yeah. You want to get to the point, it's like, let me build this nest for you. Let me look after you, after every overdose, or let me take you to the hospital after every such and such incident. And it's like, it's hard watching someone that you really love or care for go through those things. And this is not me advocating for like, if someone in your life is like doing this to themselves, then cut them out. No. Again, we're talking about the kinds of, like, at the beginning stages of relationships, the boundary you're going to put on yourself for how you will engage with someone.
Yeah,
I'm not here to drug or drink shame anyone. Yeah.
No, it's when starting a relationship, if you're not in an emotional place to be starting a healthy relationship, that means it's time for you to be doing work for you, on you, not getting into relationships and using up all of that energy in putting it into that.
Yes. Are there any other boundaries that you have that you want to share right now?
Big one that's on my mind right now is, if I can't say no, none of my yeses are yeses. And so if I am made to feel guilty about saying no, because a lot of the time it's not that I don't want to do it or I have to say no to going out to places or doing things because my health is just at that point that if I want to not get worse, I need to say no to things I want to do.
Yeah.
And then I start getting guilted about it as well. It's just too much, and I normally end up giving in because that's my personality. And then I hurt myself and I get sicker and sicker, and the knock-on effects. And yeah, it's coming up to Christmas. It's one of the hardest times for me for that boundary. And yeah.
One of the boundaries that I've had some tricky feelings around is smoking.
Yep.
I don't know if I can even legitimately call it a boundary in that case. Or like where exactly the boundary line is with it.
Yeah.
I used to say, even on my dating profiles where I would ask about like, how do you feel about smokers, blah, blah. I used to say like, I don't date smokers. I can't stand the smell of cigarette smoke. I can't stand like everything that comes with it. I just won't date smokers. My stance on that has softened over the years to where it's like, if it doesn't interfere with what I'm up to or my comfort, you do you. But again, it's that pain of like thinking like, why are you doing this to yourself? One thing that I'm still really clear about, though, is if you're the kind of smoker, and I'm talking specifically about smoking and not vaping here for a very important reason. If you smoke cigarettes and drop your cigarettes on the ground and then just like crush them and leave them there and walk away, I will not date you. Firm boundary.
Oh, I've dropped friends for littering.
Yeah.
I'm just like, if you leave that there, we are no longer friends.
Yeah. It might seem almost unfair, but it's like, to me, it's illustrative of all this other potential shit that I could just be making up in my head, but it's just such a huge turnoff.
If you intentionally put litter on the ground, because I grew up on like living on the Great Barrier Reef and seeing what happens, I'm like, you don't care for anyone but yourself. You are like a very selfish person.
It's like the level of entitlement. Like, someone else will clean it up, or it'll just get washed away. The wind will blow it away. It'll just add to the garbage in the ecosystem. It's like, no. They're either super selfish or way too stupid for me to want to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Littering is one of my... Like, intentional littering. People accidentally litter all the time.
Yeah.
But, yeah, just blatant disrespect for our planet is no.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a no. Another firm boundary I have is that I will not date someone who is a bigot. If they make comments against, for example, like against trans people, I specifically say that because that is a community that I'm not a part of, but I still feel strongly allied with.
Thank you. We appreciate your business. We appreciate your allyship.
You're welcome. So if someone's like, "Oh, what's the big deal? Like, you're not trans. What does it matter if I say something transphobic?" It's like, get the fuck out of my face. Honestly, like, get the fuck out of my face. Get out of my car. I don't lose my number. We are not speaking anymore.
For me, it's any sort of like over hatred towards a person with no small capacity for compassion, even in the worst situations. Like, I mean, there's certain level of people where I'm like, no, we don't need to be like getting too worried about our compassion for those bigots.
Yeah.
But I also don't want hate to be at the forefront of things that you put out into the world. Like, I don't think it helps you be a happy and healthy person, and I don't think it helps society become a happier and healthier society.
Yeah.
Making hatred the center of your discussions in life. And
yeah, no.
And even when I speak about my disdain for those things, I do try and make it from a perspective of like, this is a problem, how could it be better? I try. I'm not always at it.
You should make a podcast about it. Another boundary that just popped into my head, one that I've become increasingly vocal about and has emerged as a strong boundary, is I will not date someone who needs their partner's approval of me to date me. Like, I had that conversation not too long ago on a dating app as well. It's like, my girlfriend has to meet you first, and if she thinks you're cool, then like that has to happen before like we do anything together. I'm like, yeah, no, like, no.
Before even like hanging out yourselves.
Before getting physically intimate.
See, I wouldn't say that, but I would be very uncomfortable if my partners didn't at least somewhat get along. Like, for me, that's just... Because I don't have filters. I always talk about the people who are important in my life.
Yeah.
And if they dislike that person or like, it would just make me really uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, that is completely valid. But like in this particular scenario and scenarios like it, I was chatting with this guy on an app and he was informing me that like we can go out, we can hang out, but before any clothes come off, I have to meet his partner first. And if she thinks I'm cool, then we can proceed.
See, I trust my partner that if I am like, oh, would I like them? And he would be like, yeah, you guys would get along.
But see, this is it's like, if you're not at the stage in your non-monogamous relationship where you can trust their partner selection enough, I am not the person to date while you're working that out.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people who be like, oh, yeah, whatever, makes sense. I'm not that person. I'm not that person, especially, like, as a professional in the, like, polyamory coaching space. That's the kind of shit I would invoice for. It's like, I'm not part of your journey in that regard.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, my partner would maybe sometimes say, oh, like, you might scare them if you're too, like, in their face or whatever. Like, they are a bit, they're quiet or they're shy. So when we meet up, like, just try not to overwhelm them. And, like, that's totally fair because I am a lot sometimes, especially when I'm excited.
Oh, yeah. I mean, those kinds of, like preparation stages for, like, the first time your partner is going to meet another partner and that kind of thing, like, that can be really cute and fun and stuff like that. And I like those things.
I mean, you do it with your family, like, as well. When people meet your family.
Yeah, exactly. It can feel like a rite of passage, like, oh my gosh, this is a big thing.
Yeah.
But then to say, like, no, they need to give you their tick of approval for us to have sex. I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
That's legit, like, hardcore couples privilege.
Yes.
It's like, if you've decided that you are interested in me, why should it matter so much what they think at this stage?
Yeah. And if you don't know each other well enough to know if they would be comfortable around you, it's like, oh.
Yeah. And the important thing to note as well in that context is that there's a big difference between permission and approval and support.
Yeah. Yes.
I love having a relationship where, like, my partners and I are supporting each other's exploration of relationships with other people, not to other people, with other people. The support is the important thing because that suggests more communication.
Mm-hmm.
But to say, like, you're allowed to do this, it's kind of like, I'm gifting you and your cock to the masses. Go forth and fuck. It's like, I'm not about that life.
Yeah, that's... In fact, one of my boundaries is I'm allowed to do whatever the fuck I want. You're allowed to disapprove of it, and you're allowed to break up with me if you don't like what I'm going... And I mean, I certainly choose not to do things that would make my partner uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it's not because they're letting me. Like, no one is in charge because I was in a controlling relationship and like never again. Like, if you say I can't wear a certain piece of clothing, or like, in fact, we were having this discussion last night and I said to my partner, oh, if we go bowling regularly, you'll have to let me wear bowling shirts. And he's like, I'm not stopping you from wearing bowling shirts. You can wear whatever you want. I just don't like bowling shirts.
Yeah. And this is the thing. For someone like you to say, like, I'm allowed to do whatever the fuck I want means something completely different. Hearing you as a person who is kind and generous and caring and nice to people and has a strong code of ethics that you follow, it means something very different from, like, someone else who's just like, oh, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want, who is a complete douchebag.
Yeah, don't soundbite me.
All I heard was, clip, clip, bite me.
But the truth is, in all but very terrible situations, everyone is allowed to do what they want. And the thing is, we choose to make compromises and do certain things to make each other more comfortable or happier, not because we're being made to do it. And if you feel like you're being made to do things in a relationship, run. Like,
Yeah.
If you feel controlled in any way, like, that's just time to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if they, like, even if you discuss it out, like, in my experience, they have a lot of emotional journey to go, and you don't need to be there for that.
Yes. And to close this segment off, I'm not, and we're not, boundary shaming people here. Okay? Some people have a very firm boundary that, you know, I will not date someone who looks at porn, for example. That's fair. That's something you feel very strongly about. Some people might say, I will not date someone who still communicates with their exes. That's definitely not my flavor
Not
at all.
me either, but it's fine.
For some people, you know, that's their boundary.
Yeah.
If they're saying to someone that they're with, like, hey, you're not allowed to communicate with your exes, that's you imposing a rule on them.
And these are things...
Which is different than you saying, okay, so that's how you operate. Fine, I'm not going to date you.
Yes.
I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah, and these are things that are very important to bring up early in the game.
Yeah.
So as not to waste time.
Yeah. Don't leave anything to assumptions.
Yes. And a lot of these things are assumed as, like, the standard.
Yeah.
But that's just none of these things should ever be left to assumptions.
And you know what they say about people who make assumptions?
They got a sweet fat ass.
They make an ass out of you and just mpshin.
And gumption.
Mpshin. I did the wrong grammar there. People who assume. Make an ass out of you and me, but usually just you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Meka.
Thanks, Leslie.
Bye.